Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so all of you were thinking. I was also thinking that, but unfortunately, we have many more topics to cover in physiology, okay, endocrine physiology, and your new schedule is being revised again. I think it'll be up soon. So persist for one more hour, okay? So today we are going to learn about hormones of adrenal cortex in detail. Now, before we start talking about the hormones, I want to tell you something. I want to tell you how to study endocrine physiology, all the hormones, obviously, right? That you have to know their mechanism of action, their effects on target organs, right? And their regulation, and finally about their hypo and hyper secretion. Okay. Among these four things, something will be asked in your exam, nothing else. Right, now we're talking about the mechanism of action, for example. You have to understand that all of the hormones, if they are of a certain type, they will have very similar mechanism of action. Okay, for example, all steroid hormones will have the same basic mechanism of action, except a few tweaks here and there. So in physiology, you can just get away with studying about the mechanism of action of one steroid hormone and applying it to everything else. You study it like this, you study about different systems. First, you know whether the hormone is anabolic or catabolic. So usually the hormones are of these two types. Okay, so then you study about the effects of these hormones in your central nervous system, in your cardiovascular system, musculoskeletal, and all of the systems of your body. So you remember it like that. Okay, effects on CNS. And talking about regulation, all of you have studied about the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. You know how it controls the endocrine glands of your body, most of the endocrine glands of your body, and they will have very similar, will negatively feedback and inhibit the anterior pituitary as well as the hypothalamus. So if you know this basic mechanism, you can write about the regulation of any hormone. Right, and finally about hypo and hyper secretion, there you will have to pay a bit more attention, and usually a tag question is asked. Whenever you're asked about any hormone, you will have to write something about the clinical aspect as well. So maybe hyposecretion or hypersecretion will be asked. Okay, so anyway, let's dive into the topic now. I will share my slides, okay? Okay, so can...
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let us begin talking about the adrenocortical hormones. So first of all, you know that... No, okay. So let's first talk about aldosterone. Okay, all of you know that it is exclusively synthesized by zona glomerulosa. That due to the presence of certain enzyme, specifically aldosterone synthase, right? So aldosterone synthase is only present in zona glomerulosa and not in other zones. That is why it is exclusively synthesized in zona glomerulosa. And you have to know that aldosterone is extremely essential for life. Okay, so you cannot mention, you have to know the mechanism of action of all of these hormones. So I have also mentioned in the last class about the basic mechanism of action of steroid hormone, right? So what happens? First, you know how aldosterone is synthesized. I've already told you the stimulus. I've told you how it is synthesized from cholesterol, right? So finally, when aldosterone is formed in the zona glomerulosa cell, it has to reach the target tissue, right? Of the kidneys, right? So here it reaches, first it is transported in blood. Okay, so usually it is transported by binding to a protein known as corticosteroid binding globulin. Okay, so that is how it travels in blood, right? And then it goes to this principal cells of distal nephron, right? This is the target tissue for aldosterone. So now, like I told you, aldosterone and all steroid hormones do not have receptors on the cell membrane. Okay, so they have to diffuse passively into the cell first. So here you are seeing aldosterone has arrived from blood and now it is passively diffusing inside the cells of the distal convoluted tubule. And after it has reached the cell of the distal convoluted tubule, then its hormone receptor complex. This is the hormone receptor complex. Now this hormone receptor complex goes inside the nucleus and it binds to the DNA and it initiates transcription. Okay, new mRNA synthesis, right? So I mean transcription, and after transcription, the process is translation and protein synthesis in the ribosomes. Okay, so what types of proteins may be synthesized here? Have you got pumps are synthesized from here? This due to this translation process. Okay, and these are present now at the cell membrane, right? And they achieve the desired effect of potassium secretion and sodium reabsorption. As all of you know, right? You have studied about aldosterone and how it works to regulate the fluid electrolyte balance, right? So aldosterone, it helps in the potassium secretion and sodium reabsorption. So this is how aldosterone acts. Okay, so let me once again repeat this for you, okay, so that you won't forget. So aldosterone first, it right, then it goes and it binds to the DNA. Okay, it goes and binds to DNA. This causes transcription, right? And finally, it causes translation and formation of new proteins, specifically more so. So if you know the mechanism of action of this aldosterone, then you'll be able to write the mechanism of action of cortisol as well. Okay. Now, okay, so let's go to the functions, right? Metabolism by stimulating epithelial cells of distal nephron to reabsorb sodium and chloride while secreting hydrogen and potassium ions. All of you are aware of this, right? So although aldosterone has prominent effects on total body sodium, what you also have to remember is that sodium concentration does not change as such due to the effect of aldosterone. Okay, because along with sodium reabsorption, there is also reabsorption of water. Right, water accompanies the sodium reuptake. And that is why it primarily affects the total body volume and not the individual sodium concentration. Right, it promotes sodium retention and potassium elimination by kidney. So you know this, right? And it expands the extracellular fluid volume. So these are the principal effects or functions of aldosterone. Okay. So it is essential for life. Okay. So it is acutely essential for life. When you're talking about glucocorticoids, they are also essential to life, but they act more on the long term. Okay, but if there is an so it will cause severe dehydration, it will cause severe decrease in body volume, and you cannot survive. So it is extremely essential for life, right? And all of you have seen that it stimulates the synthesis of more sodium potassium ATPase pumps. It promotes the reabsorption. Also another action, it promotes reabsorption of sodium from ducts of sweat and salivary glands as well. Okay, so not only from the distal nephron, it also promotes sodium reabsorption from sweat glands and salivary gland ducts during excessive sweat or saliva loss. Okay, and finally, it also enhances absorption of sodium from intestine, especially colon. Okay, so this will lead to diarrhea. Okay, so these are the principal functions of aldosterone. Okay, so primarily, obviously, it affects the fluid and electrolyte balance. And all of you can explain this now. Okay, and more things that you have to write. You have to write that it is essential for life. Okay, and you have to also write about these 2 points. Okay, these are extra points. It can also reabsorb from salivary ducts, sweat gland ducts, and it also enhances absorption of sodium from intestine. Okay, so I hope the functions of aldosterone are clear. So regulation also, all of you have already studied while you were studying both CVS as well as renal systems. But I'm again going to remind you once more. Okay, so it is primarily obviously regulated by the angiotensin 2 through renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So like I said, the principal stimulant for the secretion of aldosterone by zona glomerulosa cells is angiotensin 2. Okay, but it is also influenced by sodium, serum potassium levels, and also actually sodium levels as well. Hyponatremia, renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. These are the factors that regulate the secretion of aldosterone. Okay. Now, others are adrenocorticotropic hormone. So like I mentioned in the last class, this is actually a glomerulosa cell and initiate the secretion of aldosterone. It does not have much effect. As well, so we learned about the stimulatory effects, right? The stimulatory factors, but there are some inhibitory factors that inhibit the secretion of aldosterone. So one of them is this atrial natriuretic peptide. Okay, so I had mentioned in the last class that the stimulating factors like angiotensin 2, they bind to the G protein coupled. So they are actually binding to the stimulatory G protein. Whereas in case of this atrial natriuretic peptide, it binds to inhibitory G protein and not stimulatory G protein. Okay, so due to this binding to inhibitory G protein, what happens is it causes hyperpolarization of the, when there is stimulation and there is binding to stimulatory G protein, then there is activation of protein kinase A, which aids in the phosphorylation of the enzymes that are actually required to secrete aldosterone. Right, but when this process is inhibited by atrial natriuretic peptide, when it binds to the inhibitory G protein and causes hyperpolarization, this process is inhibited and synthesis of this provides an important link between cardiac, adrenal and renal function. Okay, and some minor inhibitors are also somatostatin, dopamine, and something, I mean, others may also play a small inhibitory role. Okay, so this is about the regulation of aldosterone. I hope it is clear to everyone. If there is a doubt, you may ask. Okay, I think this is simple enough. Must be clear. So let me remind you, you have already studied this, but let's again study it once. It's very important. So all of you know that decreased blood volume or decreased blood pressure, it stimulates or increased potassium. Like I mentioned, hyponatremia or hyperkalemia. It also and stimulates the zona glomerulosa cell. You also know how, right? So this helps in the synthesis of aldosterone, whereas this adrenocorticotropic hormone has very little effect in stimulating aldosterone synthesis, and this atrial natriuretic peptide, it has an inhibitory effect. Okay, so this is the zona glomerulosa. And due to these stimulatory effects, there is enhanced secretion of aldosterone, and then you know what happens, right? You know how it goes to the cells of the distal nephron and how it acts to synthesize the sodium potassium pumps, and finally to cause sodium reabsorption and potassium secretion. So this is the basic mechanism. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, aldosterone is extremely essential for life, and complete failure to secrete blood volume. Okay, and sometimes when there is hyperaldosterone states, that means there is a very increased level of aldosterone in your body, then it contributes to hypertension, which is associated with increased blood volume, right? Because aldosterone helps to expand the extracellular fluid volume. That is why it may contribute to hypertension when it is present in more than necessary levels. Okay. So this much you have to know about aldosterone. Okay, so we studied about its mechanism of action, about its functions, right, or physiological actions. Finally, we studied about its regulation. Okay, and it does not have much other effects of its hypo and hypersecretion. So we will be discussing the hypo and hypersecretion in another class anyway. Okay, so now let us move to glucocorticoids. Okay, we have finished mineralocorticoids or aldosterone. Let us now go to glucocorticoids. So the primary glucocorticoid, like I mentioned, is cortisol, okay, in humans. So it is a steroid hormone, obviously, and in plasma, like the aldosterone, it is also bound to corticosteroid binding globulin known as transcortin. Okay, it is also known as transcortin. It is also essential for life, but unlike mineralocorticoids, this has more long-term effects than acute effects. Okay, and the net effects of cortisol molecules. So the net effects of cortisol are catabolic. Sorry, did I blood glucose levels? So it prevents hypoglycemia. Then it is produced by zona fascicular. It helps to resist long-term stressors. Actually, this is also, cortisol is also known as stress hormone. Okay, stress hormone. So if you are under chronic stress, then this is the hormone that is released in the largest quantity. Okay, cortisol. And it is released in response to increased blood levels of adrenocorticotrophic hormone. So all of you are aware of this by now, right? Adrenocorticotrophic hormone, it stimulates the synthesis of cortisol from zona fasciculata and secretion of androgens from zona reticularis. Okay, so these are some things that, some simple things that you have to remember. Okay. So it is very similar or almost same to the mechanism of action of aldosterone. Okay. So all the steroid hormones have this basic mechanism of action. So the first step, again, it also comes bound to corticosteroid binding globulin or transcortin in blood, right? Then it diffuses through the cell membrane of the whatever cell it is targeting, target cell. Okay, and then after this diffusion, it goes and binds to its receptor in the inside the cell, right? So it goes and goes inside the nucleus. It again binds to the target DNA. It initiates transcription and mRNA production. And finally, it also causes translation and protein synthesis. And whatever alteration of cellular structure or activity is required, that happens. Okay, and the target cell responds to the hormone. Okay. So here, just the thing I think that you have to remember is that the receptor is not present over here, okay, on the cell membrane. It is present intracellularly. And after it binds, only then it can go and bind to the DNA. Okay, only the hormone cannot bind to DNA and cause alterations. So it has to bind to the receptor first, and then it can go and bind to DNA and bring about its desired effects. Okay, so I think this is simple enough. Now this is important, okay? So what are the physiological actions of cortisol? So there are many physiological actions. It affects many systems of our body. Okay, so the number one effect is it promotes gluconeogenesis. Okay, so I did mention that it helps in inducing gluconeogenesis. So how may it do that? Okay, how does it do that? So it happens because cortisol enhances gene expression of some gluconeogenic enzymes in the liver. Okay, so it increases or stimulates the expression of some gluconeogenic enzymes in liver by enhancing their gene expression. Okay, so these enzymes are they are the phosphoenol pyruvase carboxykinase, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, and I think glucose 6-phosphatase. So all of the cortisol in the liver. Okay, so this causes an increase in gluconeogenesis and glucose production, and it increases the blood glucose level as well. Now, another mechanism that it acts to increase blood glucose level is it actually prevents the uptake of glucose by skeletal muscle cells. Okay, it inhibits the glucose uptake by skeletal muscle cells, thus it increases the blood glucose level more. Okay, so these are the effects. Now, next, when we're talking about protein, it inhibits the synthesis and promotes breakdown of skeletal muscle protein. Okay, so it inhibits protein synthesis, it promotes proteolysis, especially in skeletal muscle, and so it provides a rich source of carbon for hepatic gluconeogenesis. So you know that gluconeogenesis can take place from this as well. Okay, so due to this increased breakdown of protein and a rich source of carbon for hepatic gluconeogenesis. That is why when there is an elevated level of cortisol in your body, then you might experience leg pain or muscle pain, muscle weakness, etc. Because it promotes proteolysis. Okay, so this is also an effect of cortisol. So it actually potentiates or it stimulates the effects of catecholamines on fat cells or lipid cells. Okay, so the catecholamines, they have a lipolytic effect. So they actually potentiate, this cortisol actually potentiates the action of catecholamines, right? And so it causes the fatty acids to be available as an energy source. And this also saves glucose, or it spares glucose. Right, so we have already learned about 3 mechanisms by which glucose level is being increased by cortisol. So one is gluconeogenesis, by increasing the gene expression of enzymes in liver. Okay, gluconeogenic enzymes in liver. This cortisol promotes gluconeogenesis. So another is, when we're talking about protein, it promotes the breakdown of skeletal muscle protein. That is why it provides what does it do? It provides a rich source of carbon for hepatic gluconeogenesis again. Then it also enhances fat breakdown or spares glucose. Okay. Now, one important thing that cortisol does is it suppresses immune system. Okay, it helps in immune homeostasis. So all of you know that immune system has its many beneficial effects. It is very much important in our body. So when this immune hyperactivity is present, then you also know that you might suffer from certain autoimmune diseases or some, autolysis of your own cells, something like that. Okay, so this helps in maintaining, cortisol helps in maintaining immune homeostasis. There is kidney, maybe renal failure, okay, and there is a transplant of kidneys, then it has a high chance of rejection as well, right? But this cortisol actually, it helps in preventing this kind of rejection, okay, by suppressing immune. Now, and the next is cortisol actually increases bone resorption. Okay, it decreases calcium absorption in the intestine, absorption from renal tubules. Okay, so there is a decreased serum calcium level due to the action of cortisol. So you know that when this happens, parathyroid hormone is released, right? So due to this action of parathyroid hormone, there is breakdown of bone matrix or there is bone resorption. So now this is also from arthritis, and he's prescribed glucocorticoids. So actually it has benefits in the breakdown of bone matrix or bone resorption. Next is it has some anti-inflammatory effects as well. So basically it inhibits phospholipase A2. Okay, so phospholipase A2, then it can also inhibit, due to this, there is also inhibition in the synthesis of prostaglandins, thromboxanes, leukotrienes, etc. Right? So your inflammatory pathway it is disrupted. So it has anti-inflammatory effects. And it even decreases the phagocytic activity of neutrophils. Okay, so one of these effects is anti-inflammatory. So it inhibits phospholipase A2. So there is reduced synthesis of prostaglandins, leukotrienes, thromboxanes. Okay, it also decreases the phagocytic activity of neutrophils. Muscular system, it causes an increase in cardiac output and blood pressure. Okay, so it has permissive effects or potentiating effects to catecholamines, like I told you, right? Cortisol has permissive and potentiating effects to catecholamines. So catecholamines are epinephrine and norepinephrine. All of you know, right? So these have the effect of increasing the cardiac output and blood pressure. Since cortisol also potentiates these effects, it also contributes to increased cardiac output and blood pressure. Now, talking about your kidneys, it inhibits the secretion and action of glomerular filtration rate. Okay, by increasing cardiac output, because now you know that it increases cardiac output, and one of the factors for increase in the GFR is also increased cardiac output. By increasing the cardiac output, and also sometimes by acting directly on the kidney as well. On gastrointestinal mucosa, it also stimulates appetite. Okay, but one thing you have to remember is that it also stimulates gastric acid and pepsin secretion. Okay, gastric acid and pepsin secretion is also enhanced by the action of cortisol, and there is an increased risk of development of ulcers when there is elevated level of cortisol. Okay, due to this gastric acid corticoids or cortisol. So these have, as you can see, it has very diverse effects on many systems of our body. So you have to remember first and foremost that it helps in increasing the blood glucose level. And you have to just write these 3 points. How does it increase the blood glucose level, right? First, by gluconeogenesis. Second, by what does it do to protein? What does it do to fat? Right? So that you remember. Then you remember the immune system and inflammatory, anti-inflammatory effects. It will be easier for you to remember, right? Immune and anti-inflammatory effects. So talking about immune system, it suppresses the immune system. So actually it suppresses the immune system because it reduces the number of oral immunity. Okay, so it reduces the number of T helper cells, so it suppresses the immune system. Plus, it also has some atrophic type of effects on lymphoid tissue. Okay, different lymphoid tissues like thymus. This is how it suppresses the immune system. So you remember that it suppresses immune system. That is why when there is organ transplantation, there is a great value of cortisol and glucocorticoids to prevent organ rejection. Okay, then you remember about bone. What does it do to bone? It causes breakdown of bone matrix. So you can see here it has many catabolic effects, breaking down effects, right? Then talking about this CVS, renal, GI, these are very not very significant effects. Okay, so in CVS, it increases cardiac output, blood pressure. In kidneys, it inhibits the action of antidiuretic hormone, right? Increases the GFR as well. And finally, on GI system, it has trophic effects on GI mucosa. And also, yeah, it also stimulates appetite. And that is why when there is increased level of glucocorticoids or cortisol in your body, you have a tendency to gain weight. Okay, because it stimulates appetite. So you eat more and more and you gain. Okay, so I hope these actions of cortisol are clear. I will be uploading my slides. Okay. Now, besides these effects, cortisol has also some permissive effects on development. So it is required for normal growth and development as well. Okay, so it is also required for final maturation of many organs. It is also required for synthesis of surfactant and for skeletal growth in children. So it has many diverse effects. Okay, so one of the effects is also potentiating, or cortisol is known as stress hormone. Okay, and what does it do? So when there is chronic stress and chronic elevated levels of cortisol, then it may lead to breakdown of muscle, excessive epinephrine release, hyperglycemia, weakening of bone, destruction of immune system, inhibition of reproductive function, and other complications. So you can understand all of this, right? You have already known about the actions of glucocorticoids or cortisol, right? So you know the effect on muscle, breakdown of muscle, you know the effect on catecholamines, it has permissive effects, so it increases epinephrine release. So you know on the effect on glucose, it causes hyperglycemia, you know the effect on bone, it causes resorption or weakening of bone. Also, it suppresses your immune system, and also glucocorticoids, it inhibits your reproductive function. Okay, it inhibits reproductive function. May be neurogenic, or it may be some kind of physiologic stress as well. Physical stress, I mean, neurogenic, physical, whatever stress, chronic stress might lead to these things. Okay. So also, yeah, talking about stress, it can also lead to some psychiatric disturbances as well. Okay. So it has some complex effects on your psychology and CNS as well. So if there is a very high level of cortisol, persistently high level of cortisol in your body, then initially it might make you feel a feeling of well-being. Okay, so you might be feeling very good, or you might be having feelings of well-being, but when this persists for a longer period of time, it will lead to depressive effects. Okay, so depression might occur, irritability. Okay, it may lead to some kind of emotional liability or something like that. Okay, and when it is very depleted, the cortisol levels, when they are very low, then this also leads to depression, irritability, and all of these things. Okay, so this has very important role to play in stress as well. So these are the physiological actions of cortisol. So you have to go back and read again. Okay, there are many of them. Just try to break them down into few. Okay, like increasing glucose level, immune, anti-inflammatory, and then other systems. And talk about stress. Don't forget to write about stress as well. Okay. Now, finally, talking about regulation of cortisol secretion, it is not much different from any hormone. Okay, any other hormone, because cortisol release is also regulated by adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Okay, and one thing you have to remember is that this follows a daily pattern known as circadian rhythm. Okay, this circadian rhythm is regulated by suprachiasmatic nucleus that is present in your hypothalamus. Okay, so there is a certain pattern of release of cortisol. This is known as circadian rhythm. So what happens is cortisol levels increase during early hours in the morning. Okay, pre-dawn and dawn hours. So in the early morning, there is increased cortisol level. Declines in the evening as well. Okay, so the maximum cortisol levels rhythm is followed by cortisol every day. Okay, now this negative feedback control, all of you know about this. I will show you the chart as well. And enhanced release can be caused by enhanced release of cortisol can be caused by some stressors, okay, stressing factors like physical trauma, infection, extreme heat and cold, exercise to the point of exhaustion, extreme mental anxiety. So all of these are sources of some kind of stress, okay, and this causes enhanced release of cortisol. But it always follows a circadian pattern and is basically regulated by adrenocorticotrophic hormone. So I hope you are familiar with this picture, okay, because you can see the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary over here. So from hypothalamus, there is release of corticotropin releasing hormone, right, which goes, and so it is released from paraventricular nuclei. So it goes and it acts on and stimulates the anterior pituitary cells to produce adrenocorticotrophic hormone. This adrenocorticotrophic hormones and produces the, I mean, not different zones. Here we are talking about cortisol. So it goes and acts on the cells of zona fasciculata and it produces cholesterol. Okay, it helps in the production of cholesterol. You know how, right? ACTH goes and binds to G stimulatory protein and the whole thing. And finally, cortisol is produced from cholesterol, right? So this cortisol now it negatively feeds back anterior pituitary as well as hypothalamus. So it inhibits the secretion of adrenocorticotrophic hormone from anterior pituitary. It inhibits the secretion of corticotropin releasing hormone from hypothalamus and regulates its own secretion. Okay, so this negative feedback, now this is the same thing that has again been mentioned in this chart. So hypothalamus, in response to stress, any stress, neurogenic stress, any physical stress, as well as due to circadian rhythm, it increases the release of corticotropin releasing hormone, which goes to anterior pituitary, stimulates adrenocorticotrophic hormone secretion, which again goes to the cells of zona fasciculata in adrenal cortex, increasing the cortisol secretion. And this increased cortisol level, then it causes negative feedback mechanism and it inhibits the secretion of ACTH from anterior pituitary. It inhibits its own secretion. Okay. So about hypo and hypersecretion, we are going to discuss in the next class, possibly Sunday. The new schedule might be up soon. So I hope today's class was clear to everyone. We will discuss very simple few MCQs now. Okay. So who should I ask? Okay. So I think this question I'll ask. Tell me, what are steroid hormones derived from? Are they derived from tyrosine? Okay, good. Good, Shreya. Okay, next simple MCQ is going to Ashutosh Jha.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ashutosh, you tell me, which region of adrenal gland does not atrophy when there is pituitary failure? Which one do
Adrenal
you
medulla.
think? Sorry, I can't hear
Medulla.
you. I
Adrenal
can't hear you.
medulla.
Adrenal medulla, are you sure?
I think so.
Okay. So yeah, actually I should not have maybe put adrenal medulla over here. So cancel adrenal medulla. Talk about these three: zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. Ashutosh, which one do you think does not atrophy when there is pituitary failure?
Glomerulosa.
Okay, good. Okay, so it is actually zona glomerulosa because, as you know, it is not influenced by adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Okay, it is a very weak stimulus for zona glomerulosa, whereas for fasciculata and reticularis, it has to have the stimulation of ACTH. That is why when there is pituitary failure, zona glomerulosa does not atrophy. Okay, good, Ashutosh. Now another question is for Rustam. Rustam, are you present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Rustam, so tell me, what is the primary stimulus for secretion of aldosterone from zona glomerulosa cell? Yes,
Ma'am,
right? You have to remember that it is angiotensin 2 and not adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Okay, good. Now final MCQ, this Manvi. Okay, I think Manvi is not present today. What about Roli? Roli, are you there? Okay, Roli is also not present. So who should
Yes,
I ask?
ma'am.
Ruli, you are present? Okay. So you tell me, in blood, cortisol is primarily transported via binding to what? Albumin, transcortin, hemoglobin, or receptors present on RBC? You can just take a guess if you don't know. Is
Ma'am,
via binding to.
transcontin.
Okay, good, Ruli. So it is transcortin, and about 90% is bound to transcortin, and only about 5 to 7% of cortisol is bound to albumin. Okay, so I think we will conclude today's class. Thank you, everyone. Let me first download your attendance. So I hope today's class was clear to you. If you have doubts, you can message me, and I'm going to upload the slides at the end of the class.